What's your I met a celebrity but didn't let on that I knew who they were story? I was 10 years old in 2002 when my mom took me to the Bronx Zoo for the first time. It was a rainy day, so we practically had the whole place to ourselves except for 3 British kids running around, chaperoned by a woman. My mom quickly befriended the woman while I made like a kid and joined the horde, looking at spiders and scorpions and sharing in the awe and excitement of the animals. After about an hour, when we said our goodbyes, my mother told me that the kid, Daniel, who I had been hanging out with, had played Harry Potter in the movie that came out last year. I had thought he looked familiar. This happened yesterday. My wife took my son to the zoo, and he wanted to read every little plaque in the reptile area. My wife was distracted for a moment, so he asked the nearest stranger to read the plaque for him. My wife turned around to see Scarlett Johansson happily reading the info to him. Met Elon Musk in a Tesla store in LA. Really wanted to meet him but didn't want to be that guy. Decided I had a plan, so walked up to him and said, "Excuse me, do you work here?" He replied, "I mean, yeah, kind of." I say, "What can you tell me about the entertainment console of the Model S?" He says, "Let me see if I can find someone to help you." To which I say, "Nah, I'm just f***ing with you." He laughed and shook my hand and walked off. I, almost literally, ran into Shaq at a small restaurant in LA. He was standing in the doorway. You know how some people are so tall you don't see them? So I'm exiting the doorway, and say, "Excuse me, man," and he stepped aside so I could leave. He is one large human being. My dad met Robin Williams in an elevator. He got in and they rode a few floors in silence. They stopped on a floor and a bunch of fans ran in and started getting pics with Robin. My dad said he was gracious and took pics with everyone. The doors closed and they rode a few more floors, and my dad turned and said, "Does that ever get old?" And Robin smiled and said, "Nope. Never." Then my dad got off on his floor and they nodded to one another and my dad went on with his day. I helped Steven Spielberg move his daughter's bags into her college dorm. I was working a shift helping first years move in and I see a guy in a hat and sunglasses who is unmistakably Spielberg. I strike up a conversation, ask if he needs help with the bags, etc. First names only, we're from CA. My wife, Kate, and I sent all our kids to East Coast schools though. Stuff like that. Later, when his daughter opened the door for the first time, he whipped out a camcorder and, wearing the biggest dad grin, recorded the whole thing before turning the camera on my friend and me to ask us about the city. So, I have a supporting, the luggage, speaking role in a limited release, home movie, film shot by Steven Spielberg. One of my best friend's doppelganger is Ethan Hawke. Like, it's scary how much he resembles him, to the point that during those stupid Facebook challenges he just changed his profile picture to him and nobody realized it. Also, his favorite story was one time at San Diego Comic-Con he actually confused Rosario Dawson at a hotel bar. Anyway, one night I'm walking home from work in NYC, and I see who I thought was my friend, John, just walking on a kind of secluded part of 9th Ave around Hell's Kitchen, and I yell, "John." He doesn't turn around. So I decide to yell it again, and instead of responding his pace quickens. I decide the best thing to do is to run at him, which seemed to terrify him, as keep in mind it's late and there are very few people around. Anyway, I catch up to him and say, "Oh, you're not John," and then walk away from what was a very frightened Ethan Hawke. I used to be a server at a Mexican restaurant right outside LA in the late 90s. One day Leonardo DiCaprio came in with who I assume was his mom to have lunch. This would have been post-Titanic, so really at the peak of his breakthrough mega-celeb status. He was wearing a ball cap, sunglasses, and unshaven, but I recognized him anyway. I didn't let anyone know and I wrote something like, "Your movies are awesome, I hope you liked our food," on his receipt when I dropped it off at the table. After he left, I swung by and picked up his payment and he had left me a note back that said, "Thank you so much for not blowing my cover," with a $100 tip. Shit was awesome. I was only like 19, I went and got some PlayStation games with it after my shift ended. I was at IKEA in Vancouver and noticed this lady in a low-hanging hat had dropped something. I helped her pick it up and noticed it was Sarah McLachlan. Didn't let on that I knew who she was because I couldn't think of anything to say. I worked at a movie theater in Albuquerque at the time they were filming the first Avengers film. Captain America was about to come out, I remember, because we had the huge standee of him in the lobby. I was reading in the box office when 3 people came up. Guy asked for 3 tickets to Bridesmaids. It was dark out and he had a green baseball cap and sunglasses. He paid with a credit card. Christopher Evans. I stared at the card after I swiped it. Handed it back. I need you to sign the receipt, he did. And then he walked in. Working cashier at a tiny candy store during a lull, and suddenly we're swarmed with black suits and shades. Some guys in suits come in with more shades shadowing them. They browse, buy chocolates, and hand them to another suit. I joked to one guy about that box definitely not being big enough for everyone, and he laughs and buys 3 more. They pack up and shades escort them out. Couldn't have been more than 10 minutes. When I went home, I found out that Air Force 2 had landed for a conference nearby, and I had managed to convince the Secretary of something, Defense, I believe, to buy $200 of chocolate. So you're the reason military spending is out of control.